A very good morning to the Irish Times. Gerry Thornley. Morning, Gerry. How are things?
Good morning, Shane. How are you?
Keeping well, keeping well. We decided to get you on this morning, Gerry. I suppose the news that Andy Friend has announced he's leaving Connacht at the end of the season. It's got us all thinking about his legacy at the province. And look, he's done some great things. It's not really a surprise. I suppose the end was always going to come at some point, but he's left a serious legacy at Connacht, Gerry.
Yeah, I tend to agree. When the news first broke yesterday, I mean, it's a Monday, it's a busy Monday, lots of things going on in November, and Ireland playing Australia next Saturday and so forth, and you go, oh, Andy Friend's leaving, and you're initially surprised, and then you think about it, it quickly makes all your sense. It's actually been his longest stint in his coaching career at one place. It's his fifth season with Connacht. He's never stayed more than 3 seasons anywhere else, because that's often the life of a career coach, you know what I mean? They're nomadic in their existence, and they move around a fair bit, and I just think he needs to get home. COVID was very tough on an awful lot of people, but particularly those, say, just talking about rugby, just talking about those who are from abroad. I think Andy didn't see his family for about 3 years, and so they've been home this summer, and I think I might be right in saying next year will be his first. Himself and Kerry will be their first family Christmas in about 10 years. You forget about the human stuff away from all of this at times as well.
Yeah, you really actually don't think about it. You always think of the sporting perspective, but then when you put it like that, you need time to your family, and you need to get home and do these things as well. Like when you think about it, I'm just looking at some of his stats. He's won 51 of his 105 games in charge. Of course, took them to the knockout stages of the Heineken Champions Cup last season for the first time. Like when you consider as well, Gerry, I guess the state Connacht were in 2018 when he took over. He had the underwhelming tenure of Kieran Keane, maybe they came beforehand, so he wasn't taking over at a high point, so that kind of highlights his legacy all the more. Yeah,
I was actually thinking that as well, Shane, that they were at a little bit of a low ebb in 2018. The post-Pat Lam era hasn't worked out very well for them with Kieran Keane. They moved Kieran Keane on. They've had a couple of derby wins, rising one-off occasions, but there've been no real clear pattern of play as such, and he came in and they redeveloped their identity, as it were, under Andy Friend, and the results have been pretty good. Some of the rugby has been absolutely spectacular. The development of players through the academy, there's been an awful lot of players come through the academy. They've made some good signings, most obviously Mac Hansen. I mean, they had Bundy Aki, Mac Hansen and Finlay Bealham all involved in the series win over New Zealand during the summer for Ireland. And we must also remember that the reconfiguration of the United Rugby Championship probably disadvantaged Connacht more than any other team in the entire competition. I mean, they had to play, they're the only team that had to play Leinster, Munster and Ulster twice, home and away. Nobody else had to do that. The Italians and the Scots, by comparison, were thrown into a group amongst themselves, and they played each other's home and away. So it really couldn't have been more designed and more unfavourably for Connacht if you tried. And that's going to be in place last season and this season. And then, ironically, it'll be, instead of having ring fencing a team from each country into the following season's Heineken Champions Cup, most likely, when he's gone and the RFU will have their say in the matter, they will go to a purely merit-based competition from next season onwards. And I think also as well, we've got to give them credit for giving them abundant notice. I think Willie ran clear from the statement yesterday. They knew this was coming as well, so Connacht got plenty of time to organise a succession plan.
You mentioned it there, Gerry, like you touched on the number of pathway players he's given an opportunity to. So, like, he's handed debuts, I see here, to 51 players during his time in charge, like 21 of those having come through that Connacht pathway system. Like you talk about legacy, but to bring in players like that and give them experience, some managers just wouldn't do that. They want results immediately and they won't bring through the young players, but there's so many young players in that province now that have got experience because of Andy Friend.
Yeah, that's really true, and he that was something that Pat Lam brought in, and he's reinvigorated even more to a greater degree by having all the academy players trained together with the senior squad. So there's one, it's a very kind of holistic approach. The other thing as well is, like, he really believes in Connacht. He bought into Connacht in a huge way. I don't think it was ever his intention to stay 5 seasons, and something about Connacht can do that to people. And I mean, he's got his camper van. Himself and Kerry have travelled all over the 5 counties of Connacht and much further afield too. And you've probably seen more of Connacht than most Connacht people, and he's bought into what the Connacht means. His policy is to, polish rough diamonds and make them better players, and he really believes in the pathway system. And I think that will be his biggest legacy, as you say, perhaps, that he had so much faith in the system, stayed so long and helped develop so many players playing a brilliant brand of rugby. And the other thing as well, Shane, is he's a very popular figure within Connacht, within the squad, within the organisation. Because in your dealings with him, you just find him very straight and honest, good bloke. He's a very kind of calm, easygoing Aussie. He's sometimes too honest in the wake of his piece. He'll call it exactly as he sees it. But I think anybody who comes across him would genuinely like the bloke. He's a good bloke, good Aussie.
Gerry, where does Connacht go now when he does leave? Because obviously he has set up the systems, he's set up that legacy, he's continued on from Pat Lam, but whenever someone like that leaves a club, it generally does leave a bit of a hole unless you're very quick to get someone in who's capable of picking up that baton straight away. And as we've seen with Connacht, like there is still a lot of room for growth there, and there is still a lot of room to proceed with how they want to play. Well,
the thing about Connacht is that, like, as I said earlier, they've got plenty of time now to plan this. They probably already have plans in place. Any plans stay until the end of the season. There's a World Cup, so at the end of every World Cup cycle, lots of coaches come on board as well. It might be that they just promote Pete Wilkins from within and add to their coaching ticket by bringing in somebody else. They're very well connected in New Zealand. You know, Tim Allett, the manager, has been there for, I think, well over 20 years now. They've always had good connections in New Zealand. They've had a strong Kiwi bond, if you like, and now they've got a great list of connections in Australia through friends and others as well. So I don't think they'll have any problem identifying someone to come in, and they've got plenty of time to do so. They're a well-known brand themselves now, Connacht. So I think they're in a pretty good position. I mean, Andy Friend's been there for 5 years. It's not like there's a huge upheaval here, whatever they do next.
It was interesting that you touched on that, Gerry, as well. The fact that, you know, he's really, really endeared himself to the people of Connacht, and a lot of that, I guess, is, and it's probably similar to Stuart Lancaster at the Leinster. He embraced life in the west of Ireland, and Andy Friend, and people probably really latched on to that. The fact that here's a man who's not just coming in to take over a team, but he's coming in to become a part of the club and really, I guess, make Connacht part of the community, because a lot of people who maybe weren't even Connacht fans when he took over now probably go down to the sports ground on a Friday night or whatever to watch them play.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, I was there twice this season, and there were both near 8,000 sellouts, and that was an expanded terrace scene at both ends of the ground. This is for a team that, you know, hasn't had a huge amount of success recently since that 2015-16 triumph, and is always, if you like, the underdog, always battling against the odds. They don't have anything like the budget of pretty much any other team in the United Rugby Championship. And when they step into the Champions Cup, or even the Challenge Cup, but certainly the Champions Cup, they really are punching above their weight. And I guess, if you like, he appreciated that, understood that, and encapsulated that. And fans really liked him, I think, and the brand of rugby helped as well. So that not all success is purely based in trophies, although the winning record, you mentioned that 51 wins, is a pretty serious achievement. And of course, the other thing as well, we must remember all this, he ain't finished yet. He'll want to sign off now in style this season and do something spectacular. They had a rough opening fixture list, but they recovered with a few wins, got 2 vital wins just before the break. And his time isn't done yet.
And even some players maybe would have really blossomed under Andy Friend, Jack Carty potentially being one of those, like, handed the captaincy as well for this year. Some of these players will be really sad to see him go. Yeah,
I think so. Jack Carty's definitely developed his game under Andy Friend. He's become a captain, a leader. I think I've spoken to Jack about Andy Friend, and he loves his communication skills. He loves the clarity of what he's trying to do, what he's also kind of empowered on the pitch as well. Caelan Blade, others, they've recruited very well, developed players very well. I think that, but like all things in life, Shane, you know, a change is as good as a rest, and 5 years is a fairly decent stint. We're seeing Stuart Lancaster go on after 7 seasons with Leinster. You know, these things happen. That's the nature of sport, and time has to move on, and they'll bring in somebody else, and that's the way it is. I mean, like, it's hard to think that Andy Friend actually has been 5 years in Connacht. Where did that go? And similarly, Lancaster 7 years at Leinster, but that's always a good sign.
Before we let you go, Gerry, we should touch on the Australia game this weekend, and you're writing about it in the Irish Times today as well. Wounded Australia, wildly inconsistent, but have capacity to beat the odds. And when you talk about the odds, I think Ireland made 14-point favourites for this game, which, as you say, is unprecedented. And I guess it's off the back of the Italy game at the weekend.
Yeah, and we could basically ignore the Italy game because Australia made 11 changes. They changed their entire pack that really fronted up against France the week before. And they were unlucky not to win that game. I mean, their maul defence was excellent. The scrum was good. They scored the best 2 tries in the game. France really won it through the brilliance of their defence, and one moment of magic from Damien Penaud very near the end, the 76th minute, after Mathieu Jalabert came on as a replacement and changed the game a bit. I think that this is a tougher game than it looks. I think Australia were very unlucky not to beat the All Blacks this season as well. In Melbourne, very contentious refereeing decision near the end when he penalised their out-half Bernard Foley for time wasting. Matthew Rennell did, and awarded the All Blacks a scrum under the post for the last play of the game. So they could be coming here with the scalps of France and the All Blacks, which shows you that they are a dangerous team, and they're maddeningly inconsistent. They haven't won 2 games in a row all season. They've lost 8 of 12, but then they've had a very tough fixture list, and they'll be wounded. I think they could be more dangerous than the bookies think. But I still expect Ireland to win, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully so, and finish off the November internationals on a high. When you even look at Andy Farrell confirming Ian Henderson and Bundy Aki will be available for this game. Aki, of course, returning from that 7-week suspension following the red card in September in the URC, and talks of potential first start for Jack Crowley as well. Jerry,
I don't think he'll start. I'm pretty sure Johnny Sexton will be fit. It's interesting that they're the only 2 specialists out had in the squad. So they didn't, even though Joey Carby had to go back to Munster, they haven't supplemented the squad by calling in one of the internationally capped out halves that are out there: Ross Byrne, Jack Carty, whom we mentioned, Billy Burns. None of them have been called in, which would tend me to believe that they're not that worried about Johnny Sexton. They'd expect him to lead the side this week and start. But that would suggest also that Jack Crowley is, the misfortune for Kieran Frawley and Joey Carby has opened the door for Jack Crowley, and he probably, having made his debut against Fiji last Saturday, will be on the bench this Saturday against the Wallabies for the last test of the year. So it's been a good window for him. He's a very talented, gifted player. I think Bundy Aki, they've got a straight choice there at inside centre with himself and Stuart McCloskey, particularly with Robbie Henshaw out of the game as well. I think that means Gary Ringrose will certainly start at 13 with the choice between McCloskey and Bundy. Aki's he's just completed suspension, 7 weeks and he's been training with the squad throughout the month, so I wouldn't be surprised if he is recalled. And the expectation must be that the other heavy hitters were missing last week, Andrew Porter, Peter O'Mahony, James Ryan. All of those will come back into the team as well and will be a strong Irish selection, and it should be a very interesting atmosphere. 8 p.m. on Saturday night. I don't remember if this happening before, and a chance to close out a real stellar year when you think of the series win in New Zealand this summer and being number 1 in the world. It's a great chance to close out a great year in fitting fashion.
Absolutely. As you say, 8 p.m. Saturday should add to the atmosphere as well. Jerry, great stuff as always. Thanks a million.
No worries, Shane. Cheers. Take care. Have a good day.